Welcome to the Tough Fish Show. I am so excited to bring to you AM McPherson. AM, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited you're here. And I would love for you to start with how did you get into writing?
Well, writing for me actually began a little after I had my son, so a little over 5 years ago. It was something I always wanted to do in the back of my mind, but I was always too scared to let myself do it because I always had the thought of like, well, if I'm not good at it right away, I'm not meant to do it. A very toxic way of way of thinking. After I had my son, I actually kind of struggled with a bit of postpartum and everything for a while. And it sounds kind of cliche, but I ended up having this dream about these characters in this world that had, where a majority of the people had abilities, and I kind of just got fixated on this dream, and kind of like I really want to explore this world and just kind of have fun. And I remember talking to my husband about it, and he's like, "Well, if you want to write about it, just do it." So I actually bought bought my laptop and everything, and I finally gave my it's like it was like hitting rock bottom. I was finally able to give myself permission to just let go and have fun. I mean, the first scenes I wrote were really, really bad and they'll never see the light of day. But I was able to use it as a special form of therapy for myself to help get through a dark time. And kind of unearthing that passion is now something I can't imagine not doing. But that's how I got started doing it, and I just absolutely love doing it now.
I love that. I'm a big believer that writing can be very cathartic. And to
Yes.
your point, there are some pieces when you're writing that it's really just meant for you to process or for you to just get out of yourself and just
Mhm.
kind of like you said permission to kind of let go and
Mhm.
and it doesn't necessarily mean that you also are having fun in that way, but it is permission to let go because you've gotten it out of your mental space and you've put it down on paper, and you don't have to do anything further if you don't want
Mm.
to. But when you decide that it is fun and you have given yourself that permission to do both, that let go and have fun, what a beautiful thing you can create because then
Yeah.
you let your curiosity pull you along.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing I always like to say, like writing is my imagination's playground. So, I was like, I got to let it just have fun. And I've been interested in superheroes for over 20 years, and it's something I've always followed and enjoyed. And, I finally just gave my permission to have fun and create my own universe. And, like my main character in the story, one of the main characters in the story, he suffers from, anxiety and his own forms of depression. So it's kind of funny, like, I relate more to him than, like, the main female character just because I put so much of myself, like, almost in that character to help me process things, and it was just very cathartic, and it helped me get through such a tough time. And, like I said, it was I discovered then my passion for it. And, so many things in my life, like, with career-wise, I've always felt like I've tried to force myself to do. And like, I've always been trying it was like all these other careers was like a puzzle, and I was a puzzle piece trying to force my way into the puzzle, but I never quite fit. And, with writing, everything just seemed to click and flow. And I mean, it took me a lot of time, though, to practice and get my style down, because that was one thing I had to kind of discover was my voice and everything. So, that's why I kind of joked around, like, the first things I did, like, yeah, they'll never see the light of day by any means, but I needed to do that to unearth how I wanted to write and what I wanted to do. And, when I first started writing, I actually kept my husband knew about, of course, but it was something it was like a precious little secret of mine. I kept it to myself and, worked on this story, worked on it nonstop for about a year. And it was over a year. I then joined Instagram and started kind of looking for other writers and starting to build up something slightly. But none of my other friends or family knew that I was working on this. Like, it was just something like special and something that I just wanted to do and allow myself just to do it without worrying about anyone else judging it, in a sense. So
So then to your point, how did you work through deciding I've got this piece that I am excited about and I'm willing to share it with other people, not just strangers, or
yeah.
people that you meet in the digital space like that, but then people
Hmm.
who in that oxygen world.
Yeah.
How what was that like to when you were working through and realizing, I really want to share this with everyone, oxygen and digital alike.
Yeah. You know, it is funny. It is so much easier to share and talk about it digital life, and it might just be because there is almost that separation. Because it's like, people out in that digital world, you don't have those personal connections with. So it was easier for me at first to talk about it on social media and stuff. But I did start talking about my friends, and all my friends and family were all happy for me. And they became, big support, and they all bought my book when it came out, and they left reviews, and they've helped try to get me other sales. So it's like I've been very lucky in that sense to have such a strong, good network. But there is always kind of like, sometimes you hear about people saying, they tell a friend or a family member or something that they wrote a book, and they're hit with like all the negativity sometimes surrounding that, like, oh, you really can't do that, or like, oh, like, well, what, you really think you can do that or sell it or anything? And it's so silly. You should be allowed to do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting anybody. If you want to write a book, then go write a book. If you want to paint something, go paint something, like, so it's sad sometimes when things are hit with negativity like that. But I was very fortunate where I had a great network and who were supportive and happy. So once I started talking about it, I realized so much of it was just almost like imposter syndrome that was trying to tear me down with it. And I've struggled with that. I'm getting a lot better with it throughout the last couple of years, and writing's helped me a lot with that. But struggling with that imposter syndrome, like, oh, am I really a writer, like, am I really doing this and stuff? But then once you actually publish it, you're like, yeah, I actually did this. I can say this, it's okay. So
Yes, yes, you're right. And there is that imposter syndrome to your point, and even when it's like a new level that you're reaching, maybe it's you've gotten through book 1 and you're like, "Okay, I did book 1. Oh, wait, book 2 might feel a little different, like a second book syndrome
mhm,
kind of an idea." It's the same principle, it just looks a little different. Or
mhm,
it's one thing that I did this, but I haven't morphed it into this whole other space. So, getting it published, but then to your point, talking about it. Those are 2
yeah,
different it sounds very similar, and they are, but in the same breath, they each require just a little something different from you, and it can be a little daunting at first if it feels like, "Oh, this is new." But if
yeah,
you take a step back and realize you wrote this book because you were excited about it, you wrote this story because you just were so excited to create this and see
mhm,
them as natural extensions of that enthusiasm, then that kind of helps to shape that and remember, look what I've already accomplished and tap back into that to say,
yeah,
I've already done these things. I can do this too. And that's kind of what I'm
mhm,
hearing that you were doing is that you were built taking those steps that you needed to take so that you could put yourself out there, could share your work, and then recognizing there's more I can do. So you would go and try again and keep putting
mhm,
yourself out there. That's what being a writer really is all about
mhm,
is the
yep.
perseverance.
Oh, it 100% is, especially, when it comes to self-publishing. The thing is, if you don't keep working on it and, keep going with it, you're not going to succeed. And sometimes it's hard though, because there are times, especially when you're a first time author and you get a book out there, more than likely you're not going to get the thousands of sales you hope and hundreds of reviews right away by any means. So it can be discouraging sometimes because you almost, and I've always been bad at, like, if I don't see some kind of return on all this work I'm doing, like, why should I do it? But I'm trying, like, in that sense, I'm always reminding myself, like, I'm doing this for me, and that I want to do this. I enjoy doing this, and like, and there is a cost behind doing it, of course, too. And I'm big on finances and stuff, and always watching that. And I always have to remind myself, I'm like, there's a lot more people spending a lot more money on things like boats and four wheelers, and that's totally okay. But I'm like, it's okay if my hobby is choosing to spend it on publishing my books, and that's okay. And you have to come to a place where you're comfortable with what you're doing. And sometimes it takes a lot of work to figure that out because everybody's process is different. And sometimes what works for one person might not work for you as well, which I found out a lot, especially when you first come into it. You're looking at everyone else and how they're doing to try to get an idea of how to do this thing. But then I've discovered, like, especially with publish my first book, I'm like, there's certain things I'm not going to do again, but I did it because I didn't know what else to do. But so I did it, and I've learned, like, what, that's not quite for me. I'm gonna tweak A, B, and C to make it more natural for me to do. And so it's just actually with, like, writing book two. I've learned a lot about what I'm going to do and not do for book three from writing book two. Like, in the back of book one, I put a preview for book two and had the title released right away. Then I, like, announced the release date for next year and everything. And I'm just like, for book three, we're not going to have a preview. We're going to keep the name a little more under wraps. We're going to wait to have a release date until we actually have this thing through editing. Like, because it almost puts unnecessary pressure on you. But it's one of those things, I'm learning this as I go, especially with work on the second book. I'm like, well, now this has taught me how to plan for future books, because writing the first book, you're so focused on that first book, and then you're so excited for your next book. So it's like you want to share everything, but then it's like, oh, maybe I should hold back on sharing everything until I'm like 100% sure about some things. But that's one thing I've always struggled with. I get excited. I'm like, oh, I need to tell everybody, and it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't have.
So you've touched on a few things I would love for you to expound upon, please. One of
Yeah.
which is the fact that, so I love that you talked about how there's a theme. You've talked about how your book had that mental health theme
Hmm.
running through it. We're talking about a series here. We're really talking, I'm hearing a trilogy in the context of what's going on. So there's one, there's two, and then it's at least three
Yeah, there's
happening. So
actually I'm
then
planning on 4 right now, so
see, I mean, that's so
so
not even a trilogy. We're talking a longer series, but
mhm,
all of those pieces, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of effort
yes,
to kind of keep the continuity, to your point, from book one through whatever book ends up being the finale for that series.
mhm.
But yet you have the themes. You want to keep showing up and giving that and learning and refining as you go. So would you share a bit like what is helping you to do that? Do you plot a lot more? Do you plot out multiple books? Are you did you plan like more fly by the seat of your pants with the first book and then realize maybe I need to do something different for 2 through 4? Like, would you share a bit more there?
Yeah, so with the first book, do I have to say with the first book because I was learning so much, I did kind of first write, like, random scenes almost, and then write around those scenes and try to connect them, but then probably a little more halfway through, I decided, like, I'm gonna do better with a general outline to give me an idea of what direction I'm aiming towards. Because I had the rough idea of, like the different points I wanted to hit, but I was like, how am I going to connect these points? So I kind of went through and did a rough outline, which taught me then, for book two, I started out with a rough outline, knowing what points I wanted to hit. But then I found myself, though, while I write the book, um, I figure, like, okay, you know what I originally thought was going to work here, it actually isn't flowing as I thought it would be. So then I'll tweak the outline again. Like, I actually will go back through and kind of tweak it many of times until I'm like, okay, this feels the way the book goes. But sometimes, you have so many ideas going on, and I'm like, and there's so many little things like I want this book, my series to do. And sometimes I realize, you know what, I thought this could work here, but I actually think this is going to be something better suited for book three. And as for, like, the other books, I have, like, very rough outlines of three and a couple ideas for four. Because mainly I know what I want to happen in book four. In book three, I have the overall, like, general concept, but sometimes, like, it's then, like, connecting the dots 100% together. And I find out I do that a lot better as I'm writing. It's so weird, like, when I'm writing, because it's like I have an idea, like, always these ideas, but as I'm going, like, usually there's a faint sliver of that idea that's still there, but then it's almost like it will morph into something more, and then I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I did this. This fits better over here than what I originally had planned," and I start really working with it. That's one thing I have to say I haven't really struggled with is writer's block with this. It's more like I always sit down and I allow myself to just get out the rough ideas that I have. And, I'll skip over, like, descriptions, and sometimes, I'll put brackets and, like, insert library description here or insert new character here or something. And I'll
Mhm.
come back to that, but I'll just let my thoughts go and, like, this is the idea I have. I'm going to run with it. I'll do the whole draft, go back in and be like, you know what, this didn't quite work. and I'll tweak it and then add the details. So it's almost like making a cake. It's like, you make the base of it, add the frosting, add the details, to put the cherry on top. So that's like the best form I've done, but I've definitely have had to do how I work is do a general outline for the rest of the books just to make sure, like you said, it stays on course, so to say. And I know, like, okay, I need to do the couple things here in book one, I may had to make sure I dropped a few things because I knew it was going to come up in book two and three. Like, so it's kind of like planting the seeds for things. So that's just like in book three, I have to make sure, I'm planting some seeds in book two to make sense in book three. So I got to outline. I know some people, they can just wing it completely. I can't wing it completely.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, what
Yeah.
you've described helps to show that, you're allowing space to be able to see where it will take you when you are in the writing space, but yet still, to your point, having an idea of what you're trying to achieve so that
Mhm.
the goals or the seeds that needed to be planted have been so that
Mhm.
they are there even if they're I mean, that's all that we need to do is just drop them and cover them with dirt so that they're
Yep.
ready to start doing their thing when they need to. You're aware that you have to, and I love that. I also know that you blend a couple of genres together. It's the superhero, it's the fantasy, it's the
Mhm.
romance.
Yeah.
So how does that all kind of fit in here too, so that you are honoring the genre, honoring the series, honoring the themes that you want to bring through? I love how you blend so many different pieces, but it comes together really cool.
Mhm. You know, I've always enjoyed a good romance story, and I've always enjoyed superheroes, and that's one thing I've always been slightly disappointed, I guess, with, like, the mass like, especially like the MCU, there's never really a big focus on relationships, and I get it because it's more action-based, which I love the action base, but I was kinda like, why I wanted to have some fun with this is the relationship and the situation I've created around the two people that kind of almost in a way intertwines their fate from what happens in the beginning of the book. I wanted this creative way that the relationship is almost the main focus of the story, but yet it's set in a world where there are all these abilities and they kind of have fun, but also show growth between these characters and what drives them to try to do better and be heroes, which is like a lot where my mental health themes come in. And like my one character, his name's Aiden, where he struggles the most is because he has this tremendous guilt about things that he could never control and how that eats away at him. And how I set this up, like what happened to him that's put him on this hero path. It's very important to the storyline then regarding around Ember, the other main character who he meets. And I wanted to do something different with what ties them together. And I don't know, it came out very naturally for me, but it can be very urban fantasy based because it's not like your normal superhero fiction where there are like the superhero like characters where they wear some costume like bigs, but they're called guardians. But that's not like huge focus. It's more just these people who have these abilities and they're going to college, and at this college there's a superhero program called the Defender program, which is what you need to get into to be guardians. But there's also people there at college who have abilities but they're looking to get normal like jobs. Like one of my characters, he's really into like studying the insects, and so he wants to work in I'm trying to remember what that field's called. I think it's like endonology or something.
Mhm.
I'm probably totally butchering it, but he's looking to get a job in that field. I have one character has multiple arms and she's a reporter and she can hold multiple notebooks and everything. But it's kind of just showing like, I just wanted to have fun. Like, what if abilities were normal? Not everyone would want to be saving them, putting their lives in danger and saving the city. And like Aiden's mother, she can fly and she has a good job at the airport. So it's like I've done tried to do fun things like that, but it can very easily be urban fantasy because I've done it that way. But there is a huge superhero part of it because like Aiden in the first book, he's in the Defender program and he's trying to be trained to be a guardian and all that. So there is the focus on that world. But yeah, it was just there are genres I've loved for majority of my life, and I wanted to blend them together, and so I did it.
So in doing that, when you're marketing a book that's got a couple of genres happening to it, how do you do that so that you are attracting the right readers for it? Because it may not be completely romance in the true context of a romance genre type
Mhm.
of thing. And to your point, sci-fi, it might be a little different than a sci-fi or superhero or
Yeah,
even urban fantasy even. So there's some dancing here that I perceive that you're probably doing to help
yeah.
make sure that you are painting the picture to say, "This is this book, and you're gonna love it if you're interested in these kind of things." So how do you kinda go about that when when you have multiple genres?
I will be completely honest, I am still working on figuring all that out. I do try to lean on to like the superhero aspect a little bit more because I know a lot of people can relate to when I say, if you like My Hero Academia or Young Justice, you would like this book, and there's a little more focus on romance. But I also try to lean onto the romance element of it because I did label my first book as young adult, but it definitely borderlines like new adult territory.
Mhm,
Which the second book forward, it's going to be considered new adult. So it's like I was trying to figure out that
mhm,
category a little bit more.
sure.
Um, so, like I said, I tend to try to lean a little bit more into the superhero aspect of it because I did try to do the urban fantasy, but actually, like I went through a recovering of it recently, but my first cover was definitely a little more fantasy based, and it was one of those things that dawned on me beginning of the year. It was actually kind of happened when I started working on my cover designer originally on book two. I realized like I feel like I'm forcing my book to be something that's not necessarily not. Um, just try to appeal to more people, but I was like, I think I need to really look at this and see what I want for my series, and it just felt more natural for me to lean harder on the superhero romance aspect of it, and then also kind of have that more reflect on my cover and for the future series, the books in the series. So it led me to doing a whole recovering for it, which it was funny when I got my proof of it and I, held it in my hands. I was like, yes, this feels 100% right. Even though I absolutely love my first cover, my original cover designer, she did a great job. I cannot talk about her enough. Like she did great, but it was like that's what I thought my book should be, but this is what it actually is. And it took
Yeah.
me and being so new to doing this and learning so much, it took me just a long time to learn more and figure that out, and I still am. And I even have a marketing background, but when it comes to like marketing books, it's just such a whole other beast. And the it's always changing with the fads that's going on the how to market your book and what you should do. And everyone's like you should join book or what TikTok or like book talk. Yeah, it's just a complicated beast that's always evolving, and I'm always just trying to figure it out, and I still am. So probably will be forever.
But what I love about what you just said is that, you started out with this one vision and love the cover. It felt right. But then when the series started to present itself a little bit more and you are further along in the journey of the writing and of just of being in the author business, there was something that said, "Hey, I think I need to have another I think I need to do a cover design." I love that you weren't afraid to do it, that you
Mhm.
found you did it and then found that this cover, in doing so, it almost sounds like what it did was show back to you, yes, I'm on the
Mhm.
right path. This is becoming clearer and in doing so, it also will create continuity for the branding of the series itself because they're all looking and feeling the same too
Mhm.
in that way versus if one might have felt a little different than the others, it might have felt like are these a part of the
Yeah.
series? Not then that's okay. There's a learning, there's a growth, there's change. But I love that you were willing to say, I think I need to try something different. And you did.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one thing, my confidence when I've started this whole journey, especially like my self-confidence, it's grown a lot and I've learned to trust myself a lot more and trust that gut instinct a lot more. So
Yeah.
when I started having those feelings and thought, I'm like, I need to give this attention and actually try to get what this is telling me. And it was very hard because, like I said, I do love my first cover, but I was like, there's just it's not hitting the marks I want it to hit, and I gotta figure out what those marks are that I wanna hit. And it was almost like I need to own the story that I've created instead of trying to force it into a box that it's not meant for. And I kinda
Yeah.
just felt like even with labeling it first as young adult, I feel like I was forcing it to be something because I was kind of scared at first to do the new adult because, um, some people don't know what new adult is. They say that and they're like, what is that?" They don't understand, like, necessarily, like, well, it's for the college age group, which my book, they're college age students. So I'm like, it fits more in that category, but I was always scared, like, it costly scare people away, being like, well, I just put like adult or they're too young or something like that. But it just finally took me to have that courage and be like, I just need to own the story that I'm trying to write and run with it and not worry. Like, it was almost in a sense giving up that like desire to try to make everyone happy or try to appeal to everybody when that's never going to happen. There's no book out there that everyone's going to want to read or like we all like different things. And I've always known that, but it was almost in that case like I've always been just scared to be like this is my book for some reason. And I think it was just because, I was learning so much with my first one. It's my first time ever doing something like this. And there were so many things like, having to be like, oh, do I hit the check mark for that or that or does it fit into that? Like trying just to honestly figure it all out. And then, I wanted to get it published and I was also working full time at the time. So, I was getting up at the crack of dawn to try to write some before I go to work and work like I was a marketing director. So I was at work all day, using a lot of my creativity there at work and, then come home and, be a mom and a wife and, then try to write in the night. So I was just also so burnt out where I think I got to the point where I was like, you know what, this is just what the book's going to be right now. And I just want to get it out and call it a day at the moment. So I do feel like I might have rushed the process of really trying to figure out what I really wanted from the book at first, just because I was almost a little bit too impatient to be like, I want to move on to the next story. So I want to get this done and I want to get this out and I want to move forward with it. And that's one thing I've had to kind of rein myself in with book two, even. It's like, there's no rush. Like, it's only me and my impatience that wants to rush this out. If people really want to read it, they're going to read it no matter if it comes out next May or next November. Like, it's okay to not be able to get all the things I want done every day. So that was a big learning experience too. Just learn it's okay to take a step back and really focus on the things you need to focus on.
Absolutely. Your point about owning the story you want to create, I love that so much because
Mhm.
everything you've shared is demonstrating that. And the way you started is just by finding you had to find your voice first and be open to allowing it to evolve, to grow, for it to
Mhm.
nudge you and go, "Hey, can we go more this way?" And you're going, "Yeah, I didn't realize that was the direction we're gonna go, but I guess we're gonna go this way," because it
Yeah.
does feel more aligned or more appropriate or however it was feeling, but I love
Mhm.
that you had the courage to do that. AM, this has been amazing. Where can people
Yes.
connect with you and where can they get your books?
Well, if you visit my website, which is ammcpherson.com, you can find the links to buy the Guardian's Daughter on mostly on all major book retailers. And I most Instagram on Instagram at AMC Writer, where I always share updates and where I'm at on my writer journey, and it's a great time.
Thank you so much for this. This has been amazing.
Yes, thank you so much for having me again.